All right, let's get right into this. It's really difficult for me to make videos out in the field during operation when I'm out baling. So a lot of this stuff I can't explain thoroughly because I don't really have the computer ability to, upload, half-hour videos. And of course, the convenience of having somebody else there running the camera following me around while I explain all of this. So I'm going to do an in-shop round baler made by Vermeer, specifically the 605K model. Now, when you do content like this, you'll always have an expert show up and try to show you how dumb and uneducated and inexperienced you are, which is, in my case, very humorous. I really get a kick out of it, as I've been running this stuff for decades. I've seen everything, been everywhere, done everything. In some of my videos, I say that I was trained and I worked under and with and for some of the best operators in the world from right here in North Dakota. And I mean every word of that. And it's basically true. Now, we should all still be learning throughout our entire life, all the way to the end of it. You're never done learning. You're never done questioning yourself. You're never done asking why. You're never done asking, is there a better way? So let me get into it today concerning baling hay. PTO operation on the newer models of Vermeer. Newer models probably being late 1980s into 1990s we're talking. Most models, they do not require you to shut the PTO off during bale ejection. When you're done tying that bale, you don't need to stop the baler. That's in the operator's manual. There are advantages to that. It saves wear and tear on all of the clutches and all of the components that are turning and spinning. You don't want to start and stop that stuff and start and stop that stuff. However, on some older models and older operators like me that grew up with older models, it was standard procedure to shut the PTO off, stop all of this after you were done tying your bale with the twine and you had cut the twine and the bale was now finished and complete and wrapped. Most of the operators way back in the old days, they'd shut the PTO off. All of this stuff stops turning. Then you open the tailgate and you dump the bale. Now, while that gate is all the way up there, those belts are fully pulled all the way out. So that is the belt tensioner system. So all of those bales that you see out there in the hay yards and in the fields, you'll see those bales are like 5.5 feet tall. On really, really big bales, they're close to 6 feet tall. That's the amount of height that the bale grows in that chamber. So that's the amount of belt slack that is taken up with the whole belt system. That is a series of rollers and pulley tensioner systems. So those belts are just tensioned and slackened all the way out to about 5 or 6 feet, depending on how big you make the bale. So when end gate is all the way open. That's pretty much how much slack is pulled out of those belts and into, there's a tensioner roller that swings in there that takes up all the slack and keeps those belts tight. So what you want to do, if you have shut the PTO off, or if you are doing it that method for whatever reason, you usually want to start the PTO up again before you close the tailgate. And that way the belts can turn and gather together as the tailgate comes down. So you will see that in my videos. I have the tailgate all the way open, and I specifically say it in my videos. I now start the PTO. I start the baler spinning before I even touch that hydraulic lever. And that's so that all of the belts are spinning and gathering all of that slack back onto the pulley tensioner. Because otherwise, it's hard to explain. Otherwise, the tension that's on the drive rollers and other rollers that are in the baler, they just kind of hold those parts of the belts in place, and then all of that slack drops out the bottom of the tailgate. So that's why I do that on this style of baler. So it may be also true for the old model J's and the Super J's and things like that. So let's get into, why am I shutting the PTO off on this baler? Why am I doing such a stupid thing? All right. So the reason that I'm doing that is because it does save wear and tear on the belts. You can't see the bad parts. You can't see the bad parts of these belts on this old K. It's a beautiful old K. I love it. It's had a hard life. You can see it's banged up there on the sides. And it's banged up over here. So you can see the type of people that owned it, which I don't want to get into. That's one of the reasons I make videos like this. Because those type of people exist out there in the world, and you don't want to have anything to do with them, and you don't ever want them touching a piece of farm equipment in any shape, way, or form. But that's another series of videos. So I've got old belts here. Some of them, this one right here is actually kind of got a bad gouge in it. I've got some splices that are in need of replacing. And that is, that right there is probably the number one reason why I shut this baler off during ejection. Because them drive rollers, they keep on spinning. And in a rare, when they're spinning, they're actually rubbing against the belts as they're trying to spin those belts. And those belts are stopped. So the drive rollers are spinning and slipping on those belts in that space. Not a real big deal if everything is in good shape. It's only for literally just a handful of seconds, if anything, that there's any hard rubbing on there. That's one of the reasons why it's done, especially if you got some roughed up belts and some bad splices. Maybe I've got a bale that didn't turn out exactly perfect. It's really hard on the belts if they're rubbing over to the side or something. You name it, I've done it with a baler. I've seen it with a baler. My favorite operator once, many years ago, he wrapped one of his belts around one of the drive rollers. It cost him a whole trip back to the shop. And for sure, he was an operator that did not shut off the PTO on the baler. Now, I'm not blaming and pointing fingers at that particular method. But those are the reasons that it's done. Some of us old timers, we like to say wear and tear on the hay. If we're in imperfect haying conditions, we're taking it a little bit too dry. We got to save wear and tear on the hay. There'll be a lot of leaf loss if we leave this baler spinning. So, sometimes if I'm making long turns on the headlands and I got dry hay tumbling in that baler, I'll shut that PTO off to save hay. And, you know, I grew up doing that in the 80s many times. So that's another reason to do it. And no, it's not good for the tractor PTO clutch. It's not good for driveline components. At the same time, it's really not that terribly bad for them either. Once again, on these older and lighter models. Now, if I got this thing all tuned up really nice, if I got a new set of belts on it, and especially I'd have a talk with one of the greatest in the world Vermeer dealers of all time right here in my area, I would actually ask him about this particular part of the operation. And I know that he'd probably tell me, no, just leave your PTO running. It's usually better for everything. So right now, most of the reason that I'm doing that, my belts are in rough shape, and I'm just trying to take a lot of the risk out of the game of like ripping a splice out of a belt or wrapping a belt in a roller. Like I said, sometimes there's just difficult conditions and you got a bad bale start or something like that, or I got an imperfect bale in there. That's part of the reason as well, okay? So I did need to address this particular thing that's in some of my videos, go into it in great detail. So yeah, this is going to be a long, boring video for most of my viewers, because I really don't really have a lot of farm and ranch viewers on this channel, because I do a little bit of everything. And anyway, I don't really have a lot of connections with that type of the community. I don't have much community connections here on YouTube at all. But I am very passionate about excellence in equipment operation, and I do quite a bit of that content for that reason. Because like I said, I've been everywhere, seen everything, worked with a lot of different kinds of operators. Very few of them really excellent operators. So I did have the privilege of working for just probably 2 to 3 or 4 really good operators in my history of doing this. Most of the time, a lot of stupid idiots out there that are just running equipment, and it used to drive me insane. Not anymore, because I don't have anything to do with people like that, and that's most people out there, okay? That's just life. That's just a fact. If only I could show all of this on video. You know, I could spend 30 minutes just on getting the bale started, and the level of skill that is required, and the placement of your tractor. You're not driving the tractor, you're driving the baler. So tractor positioning, all that stuff. I could go for 30 minutes just on that subject alone. And if I had outside camera crews showing you how I'm positioning my baler and catching little pieces of windrow at the absolute perfect timing and the perfect weave pattern, because this is an older model baler and it's a fussy one. And I grew up with probably one of the most difficult models to operate, the Vermeer 605F. I grew up with that, and I learned every trick in the book and then some. So a lot of that skill carries over to this model. This model a lot more forgiving because it is a newer model. A nice aggressive bale. It makes beautiful bales. You know, it's a heavy duty model that can really suck up the hay. At the same time, when you plug these up, and it will happen, or you have a bad start, and it will happen, then you really need to know what you're doing. How to unplug a baler, especially these models. Most of the time I have the end gate locked all the way open, and I come in from the back of the baler, and I get all of the hay out of there, unplugging it. I suppose some smart ass will show up and say, well, if you're plugging up your baler, you're still in the learning stage. Yeah, whatever. If only I knew how many thousands of balers I've actually made with various models. Probably blow my mind. Anyway. Well, that's all I got to say about all that. Now, you don't see this very often, and they changed this for some reason, probably trying to make it better. There's only 4 belts on this K, and they're really wide 4 belts. I was a little bit concerned about that. And then at the same time, I looked at that and I thought, wow, that's a great idea. The one thing I can tell you that I like about the wide belts is when I get plugged up, they will twist. When I have a real disaster taking place and conditions are really, really tough, and I'm baling some really bad grass, and the bale gets lopsided right away for whatever reason. There's certain types of grasses out here in this area that are extremely difficult to bale, to get a bale started. Like I said, that's a whole nother series of videos. But these belts will twist on you. They will also untwist themselves. I've never had an incident where I had to come back to the shop and loosen everything up and then completely untwist my belt by hand. The son of a gun will untwist the belts all by itself. You'll have to raise the end gate all the way up, come back down, maybe all the way up again, make sure everything's unplugged, and it'll come out of it. It's really amazing. So that part I like about the wide belts. Like I said, all 4 of these belts, they need to be respliced and tightened up. And that would solve a lot of the issues that I'm talking about in this video. The really hard starting, difficult starts plugging up while starting certain types of grasses. It's still going to be difficult, but it would be a lot better if we got this all tuned up, And then I'd be leaving the PTO on and doing it the right way. All right. So I guess I had to answer one of those questions. Like I say, this type of content that I do, it would just be hours and hours, and probably an entirely separate channel just doing stuff like this. Okay, I am Dead Wolf. I do love doing this stuff. I've done it all my life. I've done this for a living all my life. So there you have it. A little bit of baling tutorial for you today. All right, hopefully we'll have some fun on the next one, right? Till then, you all take care out there. Thanks for listening.